Well, good afternoon, folks. It's Dr. Kremens at about 1 o'clock on Thursday, July 14th. So good to see you. It was great to see you all, see you on Monday night for class. And I hope you're doing well this week and enjoying this nice weather. Once I finished this video, I did some work this morning. I'm going to take a little walk this afternoon just to get some fresh air and enjoy the sunshine, even if it's just to buy some groceries. But I thought I would get this video ready before I do that. So I wanted basically just to talk a little bit about, what we're working on this week and just to give you some reminders, just to kind of circle back a little bit. If you remember in Monday's class, I'd already given you back the comments for the midterm. So that's the first thing I probably should have mentioned. Again, because those are shorter assignments, I was able to get those comments back to you Monday. So those have comments and feedback on them. So one thing I want to mention, as you're working on paper number 4, which is due by this Sunday night at midnight, changed it a little bit so that way, when we're back in class again on Monday, it'll give me not time to read through all those. Those are longer papers. I'm going to do paper number 4 as I normally do. So you'll get those back over the course of next week, and you'll still have plenty of time to make further revisions on them, as they come in. But that'll give us also a chance on Monday night to talk about, expanding on some of the details in paper number 4, some things to add on to. As I had mentioned in class on Monday, the edits that you're going to have to turn paper 4 into paper number 5 are going to be very individualized. It's going to depend on, what you've added from the database in terms of sources. And so I'll touch on all that in this short video. But as I said, as we talked about on Monday, that's what we're working on now. That's the focus. There's no reading quiz this week. We'll do our next reading quiz next week after we've kind of gotten through this paper. And as I said, please make sure to read over those comments on the midterm. Midterm was designed not only to be a starting point for paper number 4, especially in terms of the research and finding, your first article on your author, but it was also a way for me to check to see how you were doing. And as you notice in the comments on the midterm, and as we talked about in Monday night, there are certain thesis ideas you might be able to use. So hopefully you took some good notes in class on Monday as we talked about Porcelino, we talked about Jamila Woods, and I gave you some additional information on both of them. And as we talked about the stories, because all that's fair game, all that's material that you're welcome to use in your papers. That's kind of the what I like to think of as, and again, I'm a gardener. That's the kind of soil, that's your soil that you're growing this new, that's a weird metaphor, I guess, growing this new plant from, or this new paper from. Well, you understand what I mean. So that's the whole point of having done it in the version of the midterm, because, as I said in class on Monday, the best way, in an ideal world, the best way to do any piece of writing is to do it more gradually, do it in pieces, especially when you're using outside sources, and you're doing even a smaller a bit of research as you have been on Woods or Porcelino for this paper. So let me do a quick screen share, and then I'll mention some other things about doing these papers in pieces like this. And I'll just do this very quickly because this is just a recap of just a couple things that we did on Monday night, just to kind of give you a reminder of where everything is. So if you take a look in Blackboard, so here we are, I've got my Blackboard open. Please make sure to let me know if you have any questions on the directions for the paper. One of the things that we talked about in class on Monday is the fact that, it follows the same structure as papers 2 and 3. So it would also be worth going back and looking at my comments on those papers, because that was the whole point of doing those first 3 papers in the first half of the semester in June and early July, was just to get a kind of a foundation. So you have some practice, you can get back into the practice of writing, and putting your ideas together in papers, as I said, Monday already had research material in them. We use citations for each one of those first 3 papers, whether it was Mike Rose and Toni Morrison for paper number 1, or the Susan Sontag and other essays on photography for paper number 2, and then the selections from Harrod and Glenny. So we've been using these sources. So you'll probably notice that's why even the outline on the directions here is the same. So as I always say, also, as you're working on paper number 4, read these directions. Everything you need to know is on here. And as you know by now at this point in the class, first part of the directions is just the formatting, how to put your Google Doc together, some reminders on the works cited, the prompt, which at this point, as we said on Monday, is to expand on what you'd already started working on with the midterm. The outline is on here. It'll look very, very familiar to the outlines for papers number 2 and number 3. But what I've tried to do in the outline, excuse me, is just to kind of show you how to arrange this material, especially now that you're adding a new source. And then at the bottom, very importantly, especially if I made any corrections or edits to your works cited for the midterm. These are sample works cited that are formatted correctly. So as you're putting your works cited together for paper number 4, please reach out to ask me for help. You can go to one of Citation Machine, one of those websites, and plug in information. With the database, as we said on Monday, it already shows you how to do the citation, so you're going to be fine with that. And we did go over the format for some of those other online citations on Monday night. But again, just as a reminder of that, as I mentioned here, here's a sample works cited in terms of what it should look like. So if your works cited for paper number 4, it doesn't have to be perfect, but it should look as close as possible to the sample works cited on the directions. The first of which is a sample one from a Jamila Woods paper, and the second one is a sample from a John Porcelino paper. And again, these are from other students and student papers that I've had over the years that have done these assignments, especially Porcelino, because I've been teaching him since 2007, I think was when I first taught Perfect Example. Woods is a more recent artist. So all of this is there for you. So if you do have any questions, or if you need to meet me over Zoom, let me know, and I'm happy to help you out there. And also remember, if I go into Blackboard, all the readings that you need from Porcelino and from Woods that you'll be writing about are right there. So all that information is there. As I mentioned on Monday in our next class, not only will we talk about paper number 4, and we'll start going through what we're going to do to that essay next, we're going to do some more readings in class from Porcelino and from Woods. As I mentioned a few days ago, I don't want to give you any other readings or quizzes this week. I just want you to focus on paper number 4. That's your assignment. Take your time with it. Look at my comments, not only on papers 2 and 3, but also the suggestions on the midterm paper, because they're designed to sort of give you ideas for your thesis and, how to use your citation. So please reach out for help if you need anything, and I'm happy to help as you're working on these papers over the next few days. And again, I want to stress something that I talked about on Monday, which is that idea, if you can, and again, you've got very busy schedules between work and family and other classes, but ideally, to write a good piece, and I'll get students all the time asking me, what do I need to do to get an A? What do I need to do to become a good writer? And I often, respond by saying, it really is something that just takes time and practice. And I know that sounds sort of simplistic, or like I'm trying to get out of the question. But in my experience with writing, it really is something that benefits from being able to take more time. And again, in a class like this, you may not be able to do so, but as best you can, try to break down assignments into smaller components. This is probably a good piece of advice for any kind of class that you're in, but particularly when you're writing, and in this case, as you're trying to incorporate other sources and other readings into your papers, you need time to do that. And that's why I always break up the assignments in the second half of a 101, whether it's in the summer or the regular semester classes, over the course of a couple of assignments, where we look for the sources first, as we did for the midterm last week. And now you're adding a new source from the database, which, by the way, if you have any trouble with the Harper Library database, we went through that in class on Monday. And it seems like everybody was doing pretty well with that. But if you do have any other questions, let me know, and I'm happy to help. Very easy to use. Remember, we're using the Chicago Tribune database for this next version of the paper. But that takes time. It takes time just to do the research. I'll give you an example. I mentioned the first book that I wrote that came out in late 2016, Captain Marvel and the Art of Nostalgia, which we have in the library if you're curious. I have to take a look at it. It's in the graphic novel, like a literary history section, I think, up on the top floor. And what I always tell people is it took 5 years to do the writing and the research on this, about 4 to 5 years. Now you're writing a 3 or 4 page paper here, so I'm not expecting you to do the kind of research that I had to do for a book like this. But what I always tell students, and maybe I could even show it to you on Monday, I can show you the box of early prints outs of my notes and my research on this, because it wasn't something, especially me, I'm not a fast writer. As I said, I'm not a particularly fast reader. I never have been. And so it took me time, and I had to break up my schedule over the course of those 4 years with my regular teaching and other, obligations to be able to do this. And so, because I knew I might get overwhelmed, in fact, I knew I would get overwhelmed because I can get anxious about projects like this. I just tried to divide it up, and I knew I was working with, I had to write it probably at least 200 pages, which is about how long the, I think, manuscript was when I was writing the book before it was published. And I just did it in pieces. I did the research first, then I did an early draft, and then I added new research, and then I re-edited that draft. And of course, when you're publishing a book, as I mentioned, that's when you're also working with a copy editor and a project editor who are making suggestions and trying to catch any mistakes you might have made as an author. So that was a great experience. The other book that I worked on over the last few years also took about 3 or 4 years. That was an edited collection where we were working with some other authors. I'll find that on the shelf. I'll show you a copy. But this meant a lot to me because as a kid, as I said, I wasn't in the first reading group in grade school. I was a little behind the rest of the class, like some of my other classmates, and so we were put into a special reading group where we'd have to go into the basement of the school to study with our teacher, who was a wonderful teacher. And I'm convinced that's probably why I got more interested in reading and writing in English, was because of Sister Mary Louise was our reading and writing teacher. And I think without her, I wouldn't have been able to become a teacher and be able to write. But I tell you that story because I wasn't some like hyper talented a prodigy where all of a sudden as a kid I could write. It was quite the opposite, actually. I have a better, I think, visual sense in some cases than a writing sense. But I found that I loved it. And one of the secrets that I found over the years, whether I was writing papers like you are now for my college classes, or whether I was writing papers in high school or in graduate school when I went to do my doctorate, or even when I started this project, I always found it best to give myself some time, as best I could, even if I was really busy, and trying to bracket off that stress that I was feeling so that I could even enjoy the writing process, which I did. I had a really good experience for the most part. For some of the challenges that came up when I was working on this, it was definitely an experience that was made better because I did try to break up the work, because I simply couldn't do it all at once. I had to do it in smaller pieces, and I think that made the writing and the process better. And I say that to encourage you, because don't get discouraged if you're feeling like you can't finish the paper, you can't find the right source, you're trying to put a thesis together and it's not perfect. It's not going to be perfect. I mean, especially in a class like this. If I still had any of my first year English papers from college, I can only imagine how different my writing is. I'm not saying it's worse. Some of it might be better than I write now. Some of it might have needed more development, but we go through these different stages where we develop different skills. And by writing more and reading more, that's how we develop our ability to write effectively. And that just takes time. So I guess what I'm just trying to say is be patient. Take your time with it, but try to keep yourself as best you can on a scheduler where you're looking for the research, you're putting your ideas together, you're emailing me, or if you want to make an appointment online at the Writing Center as you're working on this paper. I certainly encourage that, because again, I speak as someone who themselves, I get writing anxiety. I've had challenges with that over the years. And one of my best solutions, like I said, is actually to slow down, is not necessarily to push myself in those moments where I know I need to take a break. So take breaks, but then when you come back, I think you'll find that you're more refreshed and you're feeling stronger about the writing that you want to do. So that would be my advice for this one. Try to break it down to the smaller pieces. I've already sort of made you do that by making you do that initial bit of research and writing with the midterm paper. So one thing I want to end up on, and it also kind of relates back to my book. There was one chapter in this book that had been published before the book itself came out. So I published it as a standalone article in a journal. And I liked it. So I said, let me expand on that article. And I included it in the book. It's not quite the same, but that was another example of revision. So as I was getting the ideas for the book together, I decided to publish one of the chapters again as a separate article to get some feedback on it, to kind of get my confidence up. And then I took that draft basically, and I incorporated it into the book. And that's what became, I think it's chapter 3. Chapter 3 was that standalone essay that I incorporated into this. So if you're wondering why I had you do the midterm as a kind of a draft of paper number 4, that's another good writing strategy that I was taught years ago, is to, again, write these smaller pieces. Now, in your case, you're writing a 4-page paper. So rather than writing a chapter of a book or a draft of it, what you could do is do a piece of it. Say, okay, I'm going to at least get through the first page today, or I'm going to at least get through the first 3 paragraphs as noted on the outline for the paper. And that way you'll probably find it more manageable, and then put it aside. One of my writing mentors once said that sometimes when you're really going and you're getting all those ideas and you've been writing for maybe a little bit too long, even if you feel inspired, sometimes it's best to stop, take a break, make a note of where you left off. So when you go back to it, you'll be able to pick right up back with that energy and inspiration that you left off with. So those are some things to keep in mind. And again, be patient. There is no writer, and I know plenty of professional writers who are able to do everything in one sitting perfectly. Okay, that's not how writing is. As with any other profession and any other discipline, it takes time and patience, and you got to take care of yourself in order to make the writing come out in the way that you would like. So anyway, some long advice, long-winded advice, I guess you could say, on that, with some ideas again from my experience as a writer, because again, I have plenty of writing anxiety. I am always concerned that am I doing this right? Am I doing that right? And what I always find is that when I can step back and have fun and learn something while I'm writing, even if it's a topic I'd never heard of before, that's where it becomes more rewarding, and some of that anxiety kind of goes off to the side. And you've got a great start. So that's the other thing I wanted to remind you of, because you've already started this paper, yeah, and you're welcome to use, as we said in class on Monday night, as much of the midterm as part of paper 4 as you can, because that was the point of doing that early version of it. So let me sum up. If you have any other questions, please be sure to let me know. Send me an email. I'll be back with an end of the week update and song of the week tomorrow. I'm going to go out now and take a little walk, get some groceries, get Rosie some cat food. I know she'll be appreciating that when I get home. So if you have a great afternoon, I hope you're able to get outside and enjoy this nice weather, and I will see you for our next update. Talk to you then.